real good to be here. I've never done a talk on facilities. That's so you guys should be scared. And I've never done a PowerPoint presentation in my life, and I'm not going to. So, and the reason that is, and I watch a lot of PowerPoint presentations, and I'm a big believer in. I'm not a facilities guy, but I think you should have stuff that works. But I kind of got my start. A lot of people, not so much anymore, but for a while I was kind of known as a horse guy. And I made my living going and doing clinics or demonstrations starting colts. So I'd come to town, and in 2 hours I was supposed to take whatever you brought me, and whether it be halter broke or not, and in 2 hours be tipping my hat to the ladies off it. And that was a wonderful way for me to make a living. And people were ready for that. People wanted to talk about training horses and all those things, so people would come, and I kind of got to continue my rodeo career a lot longer that way. But when you step in and into a round pen with a horse you've never seen before, the horse created the PowerPoint. That was the PowerPoint. And so you did what the horse said to do. And my whole life has kind of been lived that way. I'm not a big plan guy. I let the situation make the plans for me. So if I was to sit down and write a speech, I have a hard time doing any of that. Because I have to kind of go off the seat of my pants, and I have to change to fit the situation. And I think people used to be more that way, where you just did what you needed to do. And I believe because of me in that round pen, I had to read that horse to see what he needed to get done what I had to do in the next 2 hours. When I look back in time and I see what happened 100 or 150 years ago, people had to read animals. The animals dictated our lives much more than everything else. But now today, machines dictate our lives. Computers, everything that they're machines or they're non-living things are creating our lives, and you can almost control the machine, not quite, but you can think you can, you see, and so you can set the agenda, and now, so what's really difficult is when we have to read an animal, we don't read them near as good as we used to. We're very good at reading the road and the car and the computer, but I don't think we read people and animals as good as we used to. And so I think with my lifestyle, but I'm not a horse guy. Everybody thinks of me as a horse guy. The reason I ride horses is to work cattle. I'm not a show horse guy. I don't rope. I ride my horses to work cattle. And so I've been a cattle guy all my life. And I like working with cattle. I like working with cattle and horses. I like working cattle with dogs. I like working cattle with other people. I myself don't enjoy working cattle on a four-wheeler. Some of you do, and that's great, but I don't, because I can't be as mobile and fluid as I want to be. I'd rather get off and do it afoot. So when we're working, you have to go with the flow when you're working with livestock, with cattle. And so that's kind of why I can't have a PowerPoint presentation. So I have a goal, though. When I go out to start a colt, or I'm going to work my cattle or whatever, I have a goal that I have to get done. And I'll do whatever it takes to get that goal done, and however it shapes up to bring it that way. So my goal today is talking about working cattle in a facility. And that's really an important thing in our business. Working animals in a facility. But I think we have to, one of the big things I think we've really missed in our business, and I think the folks that we were talking about this morning, the antibiotic haters, or whatever you'd call them, we should take some lessons from them. And they're telling us something. Anytime you have a movement, somebody is trying to tell you something, and if you don't listen, somebody else will listen better, and they'll take your market away. But our customers are saying what they want. We're telling what they want, but they're telling us what they want. I wonder who's going to win. So be real careful and really thinking about what you do. Now when I'm starting that colt, he's got what he wants out there. He wants to stay free and he wants to not be touched. So I've got to change his mind that I'm a better deal than not being touched. So our job as producers is to just like changing that. If you're married, you kind of know what I mean. You've been married for very long. You've got to change somebody's mind. It's got to be their idea, you see. So I believe we've got to change that consumer's idea. We can't tell them what's right. They've got to decide what's right. And we're kind of late. They're kind of bucking. They got their head down bucking. Once they get to bucking, it's harder to get their head up than if you'd stop them before they got to bucking. So really, really be aware of that. So I feel that since for the last 150 years, our feel, our reading, our understanding of animals has been on this kind of a graph. We need to turn that around and get it back to this. So there's a big movement right now I see in colleges. They're changing their signs on their agriculture walls from animal science to animal science and husbandry. See, in the 50s or 60s, I think, universities started changing it from animal husbandry to animal science because science was coming on so strong. We had all this research and all these things going on that it became animal science. And it was a great thing. Animal science is a wonderful thing. Technology is a great thing. But we were so into science that we forgot about husbandry. Husbandry. And that is exactly what we need right now. We need to get back to some of the husbandry to add it with the science. And then we're heading on a path that's really, really good. If you have one and not the other, you're in bad shape. So the husbandry is the same thing that great-grandfather and great-grandmother, or great-grandpa and great-grandmother, depending on how old you are. Husbandry is the same thing that they use to milk a cow every morning. Hook a team up, saddle a horse and go to town, or hook a team up and go get the groceries. You had to read that animal. You had to understand if his nutrition was right, if he's getting too fat or too thin. You had to look at that animal and immediately know if he's sore. And those are the kind of things that when you deal with animals exclusively, that's a part of your life. I have a young lady with me, Kelsey Ducido, and she's come to spend a few weeks with my wife and I to learn, but I'm the one that's winning on the learning contest because she's smart and she's a thinker. And she comes from the Cheyenne River Reservation, right? Mm-hmm. She's Native. And so I've been asking her all kinds of Native American questions about their traditions and thoughts. So I'm the one that's learning the most. I'm kind of feeling bad because I'm not letting her have a chance to answer any questions. But I really feel the Native American population that was here before we came along, they could read the weather. They could tell when the barometric pressure was changing. They knew what was happening before it happened because they could read their environment and their animals. And I think we need to get back to reading our environment and our animals and understanding what makes them good and what makes them bad. And figure out the good husbandry. See, good husbandry mixed with science, that's going to take care of all that stuff. I think the antibiotic use that we're using these days is a terrible report card for our abilities as husbandry people. It's our report card. So I think it's telling us something. We're missing it somewhere. We have better drugs now than ever. Yet, they're less effective now than ever. Am I right, Pat? I mean, I've seen that study a lot. I think there's two reasons for that. One thing is I think the way we're treating calves when they're first born, from birth, remember a calf, and this is getting to be close to calving time, a calf does not have any immunities built in like the human baby does. It all comes from the colostrum. It kicks the immune system in at birth. And for about 3 weeks there after birth, that's when the whole immune system develops, from what I've been told. And I think some of our husbandry practices around calving and the time of calving and not taking care of these calves are doing too much to them in that first 3 weeks of life when they're building that immune system. And if they don't have the nutrition to build that, we're in trouble. And then those calves, when they get in the feed yard, 6, 7 months down the road, or a year down the road, or get into a stressful situation, they fall apart because their immune system like the one person that get TB and one that can't, their immune system is stronger, right? That's why. So some of these calves are compromised at birth because we aren't developing that beautiful immune system that they have been presented with. So we got to be real good, and we got to get to be better husbands. Husbandry. I don't know if that's a word, husbands. It's a word, but it's not always a good word, I guess. So that's my first thought. And you know, everybody is so into facilities and all these things, but that's the first place. And if you really, really start caring about your husbandry, and you really, really start caring about your animals, then you're really, really going to start caring about the stress, the pressure, the problems they have when you're processing them, when you're loading them, when you're doing things. And it's going to mean enough to you not to compromise everything you've done because you didn't get good or didn't have good facilities or didn't know how to use your facilities to get these cattle to go through it, or when we give them a vaccine or an antibiotic that they actually work. So to me, it's real important to understand why a vaccine or an antibiotic wouldn't work. When we're dealing with animals, we're dealing with the brain. And this is all cowboy logic here. And here's what I find kind of interesting. I have all these, see, I don't have much to do in my life. I really keep it limited. So I didn't have to prepare for this talk here today, because I've been preparing it for the last 40 years probably, maybe 35 years. Because every day of my life I've been thinking about a horse, a cow, a sheep, some kind of pig, some kind of an animal. And that's all I think about. Well, there's a few other things, but mainly, my main thoughts are animals and working with them in production, getting them good. And I don't allow myself to do those. It's really funny. We just came, last night we got in from Nashville into Billings about 10:45, and from Nashville at the NCDA convention. So we've spent about 5 days in Nashville. And so we were at the convention. And there's lots of people around there and lots of things going on and all this stuff happening. And I just, when I look at that place and I see all those people there and all the stuff that can be sold and you can buy for producing beef, and it's just amazing to me what's there. And I think they said there's 4 or 5 acres of trade show there that you can buy stuff to raise beef. But there's very, very little on animal husbandry. Lots of stuff you can buy. So it's our job to go ahead and do the animal husbandry ourselves.